Hey, this is Jay.
And this is Chelsea.
Welcome to the Shifting Perceptions podcast.
We are bringing you inspiration to live a more creative lifestyle because our favorite people are the ones that choose the path less traveled.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 44th episode of the Shifting Perceptions podcast. This is Chelsea. This week, we are so happy to be sitting down and chatting with Ruby Roth, an acclaimed activist, artist, former teacher, and author whose vegan children's books have been featured in the Huffington Post, Change.org, and Glamour. A passionate advocate for creating a more sustainable world, Ruby has taken her vegan food philosophy to major media outlets such as The Today Show, Fox, ABC, and CNN. And as a plant-based family ourselves, we couldn't be more grateful for her work. Since the runaway success of That's Why We Don't Eat Animals, Ruby has created 5 more beautifully illustrated children's books, including Vegan is Love, V is for Vegan, The Help Yourself Cookbook for Kids, and the soon-to-be-released Bad Day. We love this collection of books, not only because it has helped countless parents educate and encourage their children to find a holistic approach to healthy living, but also because it stresses the power of good habits and their ability to change the world for the better. We got to chat with Ruby about how growing up in a family of Holocaust survivors influenced her childhood, what made her want to create such an illuminating series of children's books, and how she manages the inevitable artistic blocks that all creatives face. We love diving into the many layers of Ruby, and we think you're going to love this one. Let's jump in.
Hey everyone, this is Jay Alders. It's been a busy season. Hope you guys have been great. I have been crazy busy with my art, thankfully. I am working on and almost completed a street art mural in Westwood, New Jersey. It's my first large-scale spray-painted piece. Really excited about it. It's for my friends at Iron Buddha in Westwood, New Jersey. So if you're up in that area, check it out. I'm also working on finishing a rather elaborate painting that I've been working on for a couple of months, actually. And I can't wait to share it with you because I'm really excited on how it's coming out. I also had this crazy honor of being invited as one of the featured artists for the upcoming See Here Now Festival in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Last year, we brought the kids to the festival. It was the first one, and Jack Johnson was headlining, and G Love was there, and it was just an incredible lineup. Blondie was playing, and my kids fell asleep on the rafters backstage, and it was just really cool. And this year, I was asked to be one of the visual artists that's displaying work. I'm super crazy excited because this year's lineup includes one of my favorite bands ever, Dave Matthews Band. Also, Lumineers are going to be there. Who else? Joan Jett, Dispatch, Blind Melon, Donovan Frankenreiter. Holy smokes, there's just tons of people playing, and I'm crazy excited and honored that I'm going to be having some artwork there. So you can check out my updates on social media. I've also had some crazy flash sales going on my social media, so check that out. Go on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube or any social media and type in Jay Alders and you will find me. And Chelsea, my co-host and wife, has been also rather busy delivering little people into the world. She's a birth doula, a baby helper, as our kids call her. And you can see what she does on ommamasdoulas.com. And now let's get into the conversation we had with Ruby Roth. Hey, Ruby, thanks for joining us today. We're really, really excited to have you on our show and pick your brain on so many topics.
Thank you. I know it was took a minute for us to connect, but it was an Instagram meeting, and I've been excited to talk to you.
Yeah, well, you were busy going to Kauai, I believe it was, when we first connected, so that's not such a bad
very busy,
not such a bad reason, right? How was that trip?
Getting unbusy.
Yeah, was that trip awesome?
It was so good. It's such a healing place, and also it has a very dark side too, which I think people don't know about in Hawaii. But it's definitely one of those places that people feel a lot of energy. Whatever you have inside of you, it's going to bring it out, good or bad. So it was very, very good to be there and unplug and not touch anything electronic for the most part.
I'm jealous of that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Sounds phenomenal. We were there. What was it? 5 years, 6 years ago?
I was pregnant with Summer.
Yeah, 6 years ago we were there. So it's definitely an awesome place. After about a week, we kind of got our got a little landlocked and we're ready to
Yeah,
go
I
home.
felt a little stir crazy, to be honest. I couldn't unwind as well as I thought I would.
It's very small, and it takes actually a while to like shake off your normal routine.
Yeah.
I was made there and born and raised back and forth, so
Okay.
so
That's pretty
it's
rad.
in me, but I know that feeling too.
Yeah.
So Ruby, we're like really excited to talk about like a lot of topics, and I guess the first launching point is how we first stumbled across you. So just to preface our whole conversation is, so Chelsea and I and our 3 kids are all vegan. I know you and your daughter or stepdaughter. I think she's your stepdaughter, right?
She was actually my stepdaughter in a former relationship, but yes,
Okay.
I helped raise a child
Yeah.
who's born and raised vegan.
So
Awesome.
you guys are vegan. So I know that's, for some people listening, they're like, cool. Other people listening, they're like freaking out, like you guys are nuts, which is all good. But you had you wrote a book. That's Why We Don't Eat Animals, I believe is the title.
Yes.
And it was, I believe, given to us or we bought it. I don't remember, but it was one of the books that we really were drawn towards when our daughter was first born. I love, me being an artist, I like absolutely adore your illustrative style. I think it's just a great combination of like sort of cartoons with graphic design elements, and it's just rendered so beautifully the way you blended all the artwork. So the artwork was really awesome for me to check out. And then the book itself obviously has drawn a lot of controversy, which I'd love to hear about a little bit. But that's how we first kind of stumbled upon you. And then I checked you out after the, at the end of the book and mentioned your information. And I was just kind of blown away by the diversity of your style. So I guess since that's what drew us to you, in going into your website, I was sort of blown away by how many interviews you've been on about, people zeroing in on you as if you were like the vegan antichrist or something. People were like freaking out. So
well, those books started as, I didn't realize that I was going to get into children's books, and I was always planning on being an artist, but I wanted to create art with a purpose. And I was teaching at an after-school program, and the kids started asking me why I wasn't eating what they were eating and being served at recess, which was string cheese and milk,
yeah.
like a waxy, disgusting apple.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, let me just go look for a book. There's got to be something out there. I'll bring it in. We'll do an art project. We'll talk about, why I'm vegan and what that is and what that means. And when I went to go look, there was nothing out there. There were like a couple titles, and, one was like a talking tomato. And these were inner city, street smart kids. I spoke to them like they were adults, and I just wasn't going to read them that book. And I couldn't find what I wanted to read them. So my 2 worlds of art, and I had studied social justice, American history, and politics, and loved all of those dimensions of study. And so that all came together for me, and I decided to write the books that I wanted to see. And so the style that you mentioned in the books really comes from working with kids, and they're so genius at kind of essentializing what they see into like very, very basic shapes.
Yeah.
So I was inspired by the art that they were doing, and kind of blended it with my own style, which was kind of graphic and almost graffiti-esque with some of the shapes and lines. So that's how that first book came about, and it ended up being the first book of its kind in children's literature that was nonfiction, addressing the emotional lives of animals, factory farming, the environment, and endangered species.
Yeah, it was so interesting because I do feel like we went through the same journey where it was like there weren't a lot of options as far as how to educate our children. There's more now. I'm not sure. Like, I feel like everyone comes up with very different approaches, but you're right. You need more of like that grown up conversation with kids when it comes to that topic. Because if a kid is ready to have that conversation, they're probably pretty mature when it comes down to it. But isn't that an interesting journey? Like, did you find that now you had sort of a talking point, or did you still find like this was such a struggle to translate to kids that had never heard this concept before?
It was like a 5,000 word book in the beginning.
Oh, I bet.
I was like, this is going to be a different kind of book. And they were like, no, it's not. This is, if you want to do a picture book, you've got to make it simple. And there's certain protocols you need to like fall into line with. So it took a lot to really cut and really find the simplest way of saying things without sugarcoating, but also providing, truth and honesty to what I was trying to relay about what's going on with animal agriculture and the environment and how we treat these animals. So it was a bit of a struggle and a lot of research. I had already been researching because I had been vegan for, I don't know, maybe like 6, 7, 8 years by that time. But yeah, it turned into a more traditional children's book. And I spoke with my students. I was with my kids as I created this book and was bouncing things off of them and, seeing what kind of questions they asked and how I could answer them in the book. And I really wanted it to be real and drop science, but also be manageable for a child's capacity and not be overwhelming.
Yeah, and I find it to be a pretty broad age group that can read it, which I'm sure you've found through the years, that it's like you can – I feel like my daughter when she was 3 probably got something different out of it than she would get now where she's almost 6. It's like a different book.
And I tell people they can even before the certain age group that it's listed for, which I think is like officially 7 and up, kids are starting to ask questions and you can really take the pictures and you don't have to read straight out from the book, but there's discussion to start having like as soon as they're talking.
Yeah. And for the record, like, I think that's such an interesting topic because we've had people be like, oh, well, how do you explain it to your kids? Because, our household's just vegan. So like for them, when they're in other homes, they have to like understand what that actually means. And it's such an interesting concept because for us, we actually had no choice. Like my daughter was probably 4 and my twins were 3 and we were walking through Whole Foods and there was a giant dead cow hanging in the back of of Whole Foods. And so I find like for me, it was actually very easy. Like this is what people do, is what they're eating. It's fine. I'm not going to like criminalize people for their choices right now, but it's actually interesting to me what conversations come up for people that aren't vegan. Like they actually have their kids and they see the same thing. So it's just an innocent question coming up that has to just be answered in different ways, like it's just an interesting talking point for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it comes up at some point. I think in life, I didn't start really, I feel like I knew what was going on in the industry, but I wasn't vegan. And I was like, oh, it's, my attitude was, oh, it's just kind of bad, but that's how it is. And it took me until I was, I think I was 20 when someone looked at all my, political leanings and my daily activities and said, your eating habits don't match your morals and your values. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And I went on a deep dive and looked at all the undercover videos, and you can tell you're not just looking. By now I can tell because I've researched for a decade plus, you're not looking at an isolated incident when you're looking at these undercover footage videos. Like this is how it is.
Yeah.
And it's unimaginable and makes you not feel human.
Yeah. And what a delicate bridge to sort of like build between like not having that have to show a child like footage of that and yet translate it right into be like,
they don't need it. They're like already on board. You know? They're like, why are we doing stuff that hurts the environment and animals? Like, why wouldn't we change it?
Yeah.
Ruby, like growing up as a little girl, did you have these sort of personality traits coming through where you're like very strong-willed and like, looking up to people that really made a difference? Or did you kind of just fall into this political activism thing through your art and the book? Was this something that all along you had kind of presented these traits?
Yeah, I think it was in me. Not so much outward, but like it kind of discovering things inside of myself. I come also from Holocaust survivors. And so there's a lineage there of oppression and fighting oppression, literally trying to survive it. I didn't have any of that in my life, but it was passed down to me in my history. And so I think there was a sense there. And then as a kid, I had scoliosis, a curvature of the spine. I started wearing a back brace when I was about 6 years old. for 13 years, 20 plus hours a day.
Oh my God.
And so I was physically bound, and started, I think, locating what I know now is the observer mind. I remember having the thought very young, I am not my body, and figuring out how to deal with pain that was happening to me physically while like still maintaining like mental freedom and discipline to, persevere and keep going in this brace. And also, that led me to probably have some panic attacks starting very young, and just watching my mind and watching my body and having a mind-body connection and using art as an outlet. So art became an outlet for what was going on inside of me. And also I was, drawing women and these figures. I was looking at my own body on x-rays. It was all connected, and I became very discerning about what food I put into my body, because anything I put inside while wearing this brace, like I could really feel it.
Yeah.
If I got a sugar rush, I could feel that extra because it was like being held in and contained. So I think more than like outward activism, it was like an inward journey that made me sensitive to all of these, the mind, body, planet connection, how all of those things are connected, and how our behavior affects the outside world. And I always knew I was going to be an artist, and I've always drawn women and figures, and then the books kind of happened, and now there are 5 of them. And so that's where you see the breadth of like everything from nude feminine figures to children's books.
That's something I was going to ask you about, is like there is such a wide array of styles and subject matter. And for a lot of artists that I talk to, and I know for all artists, including myself, and I'm sure yourself, like finding your style, whatever that actually means, usually takes quite a while, and it usually happens without you even realizing it. And I feel like there's such a logical push towards finding like your niche. And with you, it's like you have like multiple niches, and it seems to all be working for you. And I'm really curious from a business standpoint, kind of how that came about, and if at any point you felt an inward or outward business pressure or spiritual focus on, I should be putting more emphasis on one style versus another.
Yes. I'm glad it looks like it's all working from the outside, because I think I have an artist mind, just like any artist and entrepreneur, like constantly trying to figure things out. It is something, to me, the styles are all cohesive. Maybe some are a little more exaggerated or simplified, but I think that my line quality, from my children's stuff to my adult figurative stuff, is all similar.
Really? I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, because like when I look at it, I could obviously tell it's you, because I know I've been looking at your work, but I feel like the illustrations in your children's book has like, I feel like when you said graffiti, I was like, yep, I see that, because there's like sort of like a volume, like a voluminous, I think that's a good word, a voluminous nature to your forms, and how there's like a balance between curves and angular shapes. And then with your figurative work, it's much more like traditional line work, and for me it looks very different. And so it's interesting to hear that you think that, or you feel that it's almost one and the same for you.
Well, I think that there's always a range, because I think most of my education, anything I've learned about art, mostly comes from studying live figure drawing, going to figure drawing classes, instructed, uninstructed, all kinds of different teachers, and studying the body. That just happened to be what I was interested in. So when I'm drawing the figure, I don't know, it just depends on my mood. Sometimes I can go a little more traditional, but I'm always I have to push myself to go really traditional. I'm always tend to be like a little distorted on purpose, because that's just what I like. I like big hands. I like big feet. And so, yeah, you can see, I suppose some of my figure drawings are more stylistic, where there's a little more style emphasis, and then some are more traditional. But I've put that all out there, and hoped that just people would like it if they like it, and it has been a huge struggle to figure out, quote unquote marketing,
right?
what I'm supposed to do. And this is probably something that a lot of people struggle with, because these days people do more than one thing.
Right.
I've had 2 different websites for the last 10 years, one with my adult stuff, one with my kids' vegan stuff. And now my new children's book is about emotions, and it fits in neither one. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to put everything under one umbrella and kind of rebrand as me, as the artist, not just like vegan books, which I think those books, working on them for 10 plus years, I became kind of an accidental brand. I didn't mean to, but there was a very, very cohesive story, look, and message behind all of those books. And so it branded itself, but then I kind of got pigeonholed.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I find it so, I don't know, interesting or strange and bizarre how the visual arts, we are so labeled and kind of tucked away in a corner with our subject matter, unlike any other creative medium. Like you would never hear, like, I don't know, pick a musician. You would never hear like Robert Plant say, well, this is my Led Zeppelin website for songs about trolls and hobbits, and this is my website for Led Zeppelin songs about love and sex. Like you would never hear, a chef have a different website for like here's my pastry website and here's my whatever. It's but for visual artists, we do feel this sort of pressure to not be confusing for our audience. But in, like you mentioned, we do have, as artists, such diverse interests and styles, and it's only normal that we would want to experiment with multiple subject matters and mediums. And what would you tell artists listening that are kind of like looking for the holy grail of like quotes like my style, like as if it's supposed to be one thing?
I think all creatives struggle with this. I mean, remember when the Beastie Boys went from kind of rap to like more electronica, and everyone was like, what is happening? But they just did it. And that was true, that you have to be true to yourself. My range is true to myself. I don't know what else to tell people besides like, I don't want to do it I refuse to do it under a pen name or, like a pseudonym.
Well, do you have people that are like, oh, I just came here for a kid's book? Like, what is all this stuff? Like, do you actually have people respond that way? Or is it just like you're creating it in your head that it might be a divide?
I've more seen it at events, like when I go set up, like this last year, I had a booth at the LA Times Book Fest. Yeah. And I brought everything that I had. I brought my kids stuff, and I put up, posters of my feminine figurative stuff. But there were like nudes, women nudes, and then of like stacks of kids books and like a cute area. I could see that like people passing by were like, they didn't know, like, should we go over there? Should we not go over there? And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So I'm not, maybe if you're super famous artist, people are going to come to you, but that fame has to come first before like before then you have to tailor every single event that you do to one or the other audience.
So that brings up such an interesting topic, because we get lost in that world a lot too, of like proper branding and marketing, because I don't think there's anyone out there who has really nailed down what's perfect for an artist yet. Like I really don't. I think we live in a different world now, and like it's not like people will come to Jay and be like, well, you're a surf artist, like all you can do is surfing. And then there's like a naked woman and they're like, don't let my 12-year-old go near that painting.
Yeah, it's like shopping.
Like it's so uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, but so there's no perfect way. Like it's just like you have to like
I've been
person.
Looking for a model, like who can I, study to and like see what they're doing. And there really isn't anyone out there. And if you look at, you join any kind of like Instagram marketing or marketing your business, whatever, like any of those articles, it's like cookie cutter,
right?
Pick a color palette, pick a font.
What's your niche? Yeah. Give us your one niche.
Yeah. Don't confuse people.
And a lot of those Instagram people with big followings do the same thing over and over.
Oh my God, it's
and
so
over
obnoxious,
again.
isn't it? It's like, it feels like those, I get lost in those worlds too. Like, I'm not going to like sit here and like say that people are wrong for that, because I get sucked into that too. Because I want to, I have 3 kids, I have to make money, and I'm like, well, maybe I should study these things also. And it just seems like the people that are making the most money are like teaching how to do the thing that they're doing. Like bloggers are like teaching how to blog, and video guys that are like teaching how to be a YouTuber. And it's like, and then
They're
if you actually,
selling hope
it's like
what
crazy.
And also people are getting burnt out on everything on Instagram and everything. So I can only suggest like being true to yourself. If you that might work, being cohesive and doing the same thing over and over again, but then good luck trying anything new, because you're going to be stuck. So I've decided, to put everything under one big umbrella. I'm going to have different entry points. So, I'll still give wedon'teatanimals.com out to people, and it'll go to a certain entry point on my website that's specific to that. But then, you're welcome to browse around and see everything in the shop in the end. And looking back, like one of my favorite artists and people is Shel Silverstein. We all know.
Oh yeah,
so good.
We all know his children's books.
Sure.
He was also an illustrator for Playboy magazine for 10 years. He was a playwright and a singer-songwriter. He wrote pop chart songs that we all know for other people. Just amazing, incredible, prolific, creative person. And I often think, like, if Shel had to have a website today, what would Shel do? What would that look like? And I think I'm as close as what I've done is as good as I know how and can figure out. And I don't think really any marketing person could tell me, because nobody knows.
It's so strange. Our country and our society is just so Puritan and bizarre, because it's like you're sitting here writing books about not killing and torturing animals, and you're vilified for it, and then you or myself might paint a naked body, which is like normal, in the human aspect of things. Like, it's normal to have a naked body under your clothes, and yet both of those things are like, oh my God, you're so controversial, and you're pushing
You also
pushing
can't
the limits.
Get children without naked bodies.
Yeah,
so
exactly. If it were not for lust, you wouldn't have kids in the first place, right? Like, it's so nuts. I'm really curious about something you said earlier. Dig into a little more. So this is another thing we have in common I didn't realize is my grandparents are Holocaust survivors as well, and I've done a lot of thinking since they've passed, especially on just how that's kind of shaped my persona and outlook. I feel like on one side of it, I grew up in a way where I never really fully felt safe, and I never really fully felt like I fit in, but then I also had this tenacity and this strength and this survivor's pride also. So it was like this source of strength and pride, but also a knowledge of being the underdog, and that it might all be taken away from you. Like, these are some of the things that were sort of ingrained in my childhood, and I'm wondering how that affected you, because I feel like for me, it kind of pushed me towards the arts to sort of deal with all of those emotional things. And I'm wondering if you'd spent time sort of analyzing that with yourself and how that shaped you.
You're absolutely right. Like, I relate to a lot of things that you just said, especially this underlying sense. It's like a little bit of an undercurrent, and I wouldn't know otherwise where it came from, but like that things could get taken away, or that something bad could happen. There's studies now in the field of neuroscience that show how fear is passed down through generations, even if the children didn't experience the cause of the fear. And I can certainly see that in my family, and a kind of history of people experiencing panic attacks, which can make you feel like everything is being taken away from you, like your life is getting sucked out of you. But yeah, there's definitely there's definitely strength and weakness in being the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. It wasn't talked about too much in my family. but the stories were there and they were known about, and just incredible suffering and death and loss.
Ruby, were both your parents Jewish?
Yes.
So did you
only
have
one side were Holocaust survivors. The other were already migrated out of there.
Okay. Did you have a shock response to being vegan from your parents? Because I feel like that's been like the funniest part of the journey with Jay, is that his parents were like, wait, what?
My parents like freaked out. They were like, wait, what? You're going to die. Oh my God. Like, just like
the Jewish mother's like, eat.
Yeah.
So dramatic. Like I remember I told her in the car, I was like, Mom, I got to tell you something. She was driving me home. I had a summer gig in high school drawing caricatures at Six Flags, and she was driving me home, and I was like, Mom, I got to tell you something. She was like, oh my God, what? What is it? Oh my God, tell me. Oh my God. She was like, freaking out. I told her, I'm like, Mom, I just want to let you know, like, for the past few months, I've been living, vegetarian. I haven't been eating meat and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh my God, you're going to die. What are you doing? Like, freaked out. It was like so dramatic and such a Brooklyn mom response, you know?
Yeah, very mom response. But the funny thing is my mom became vegetarian when she was a little kid.
No way. Well, that's good.
I just thought it was a taste preference. Growing up, she really didn't talk about it. She cooked meat for all of us and my dad, who was like a Hungarian meat and potatoes guy.
Right.
So she discovered it first, but I discovered it later, completely separate from her. She
That's
never
funny.
pushed it on me or really talked about any motives behind it.
So Jay, I take my sleep very seriously. You know that.
I know this.
Yes.
This is true. You don't mess with Chelsea's sleep.
And here's the thing is that I'm a birth doula. So it's actually kind of funny because
you don't get much sleep anyway.
I don't get any sleep. It's really kind of crazy. The game changer for me for getting back into a really good sleep cycle has been CBD oil, for sure.
Down with CBD?
So Jay did some due diligence and found a absolutely well-known, actually, right? And
very
phenomenal
well-known
brand.
company that decided to actually partner with us, which we're excited about.
Super excited. And
Charlotte's Web.
What a better fit for our first full-time affiliate, right? Like full on.
We're both stoked. We've been using CBD for, I don't know, like half a year or a year.
Probably coming up to a year, yeah. But it actually gets me like really back into the exact flow of sleep that I need.
And I use it to not be such a stressful husband. As you can tell, it does actually help, though. I have a lot of everyday stress from work and from being a dad, and I find that it does kind of take the edge off.
Yeah, so we've got some links and some codes for you guys.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in checking out Charlotte's Web CBD, you can go to jalders.com/CBD. That's going to get you 10% off everything except for the bulk and the original. And we have to say this, and I'm saying this in italics, that everything we've said is not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and none of this is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure, or prevent any diseases. So we are not doctors. We don't play them on the podcast. Once again, that's jalders.com/CBD. Don't forget to use code ALDERS for 10% off. That's spelled ALDERS. So talking about, I guess, kind of horizontally going to another topic here, but staying on the line of struggle. So talking to the other artists and musicians and creative people that are listening, what are some of the things about creativity that freak you the fuck out, that are terrifying, that are still scary despite how polished your marketing is? What are some of the things that you're still just bugged out about with this crazy job that we've chosen?
There is constant resistance always in me, and I think in every artist and creative mind. That is always something that I am overcoming all the time. Sometimes it's every day, sometimes it's multiple times a day, but everything from I don't want to start this drawing to I don't want to make this phone call to, the sponsor of the event that I'm putting on, all kinds of things. And I think that I'm really good at overcoming resistance, not necessarily always in a peaceful, like happy manner, but like by being committed to the grind and being committed to showing up and doing the work, whether I feel like it or not. And that is how all of my books have come into existence, is because I had an idea at some point. I never sat down to write it completely. I file my ideas in a document. Each one gets a new document, and I start adding to it as I have ideas.
Yeah.
And then once it's far enough along, then you really like can dive in, but you've done a lot of the preliminary work without struggling. So resistance is always there, and sales are always difficult. Like I just do not like it. I don't think most artists like it. My ex was a very prominent artist, and he happened to have a very A personality that made him a great salesman, and a great business person. But, that freaked me out too. I was like, oh, I'm not like that. I'm never going to be able to do this. So I think these are completely cliche, unspecial things to mention. I hope it makes people feel better that like you can have success and you can have things going on and be busy all the time, and you will always face resistance, like internal resistance. And that means doubt and fear as well. Yeah. Like there's a great book that everybody should read if you don't know it already called The War of Art.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Stephen Pressfield. And it is teeny tiny little mini chapters on all the ways that artists and creatives manifest resistance, even to the level of like marrying somebody who is going to take up all your time so that you don't actually have to sit down and face your own work. Like really, really deep level stuff.
Well, so what are some of the tools that you do use when you're like seeing that resistance? Like if you're like, oh, I have to finish a book, and you're just like, I don't want to do it. Like I picture you like a toddler stomping your feet. Like I just don't want to do it. So like, what are some of the things you do?
I make a lot of lists.
Okay.
I've got big giant pieces of paper and craft paper rolls that I roll out and like write different months down. And sometimes it's small to-dos that are, immediate. And sometimes they're like bigger ideas that I write on the side. I don't know when I'm going to get to them, but they're there, in my consciousness.
Yeah.
And no longer just sitting in my mind, but like out on a piece of paper so I can continue to remind myself. And sometimes if I'll just do one little thing, if it's a phone call that I need to make, I'll just do one phone call. And then, really just, it doesn't matter how I feel, just sitting down, and trusting by this time that if you sit down and make the space to draw or write, that even if what comes out is bad or no good, something still comes out.
Yeah. Well, so you have two very different styles. So do you find like, are they contributing to like a certain place in your head? Like, is it always more the stylistic naked bodies that are coming out normally, but then you just do the other stuff for illustration? Or do you play around and do like the drawings we see in your books?
What comes out naturally when I'm just drawing for myself is the figurative work. I feel like I'm almost my own illustrator. Like I really step into illustrator role when I'm working on a book, because I'm thinking about composition and color and tone and feel and texture. And so that's much more, I'm making more intentional choices. Although even then I feel like my best drawings for the children's books come out when I'm not working specifically on an idea, but just drawing kind of around that idea and doing a lot of drawing. Just, if I'm doing one illustration for a book, like, we'll talk about Bad Day, the new book with the drawing that's on the cover. I drew that little boy a bunch of times over and over and over till I landed on, one drawing that I was like, that's it. That's him. And that's his teddy bear. And that's the one.
Ruby, how often do you put yourself in a creative spot where you are just completely creatively uncomfortable, technically speaking? Like, are you more of an artist where you feel like, okay, this is my process, these are my mediums, I'm going to just bang it out, do my thing and tap into creativity? Or are you like, you know what, I want to constantly push myself to try things in a different way, or try to render something in a way I've never done before, where you're kind of putting yourself through the struggle purposely? Or do you rather, are you more of an artist that just likes how you do things and you do it that way and that's how it is? Which better describes you, Ruby?
I think it's more the phases and experimentation and pushing myself. I'll have, for example, this year, because of the book launch, has ended up being more administrative. And so my brain is more in like business outreach marketing mode. And I can get exhausted there. And then I don't have time to like have hours and hours in my studio of just playing. And I don't have set mediums that and a set process that's already like a well-oiled machine. I'm always playing per project and per drawing. But to keep myself going and to keep myself enlisted in some kind of creative flow and study during this administrative time. Right now I'm studying with a teacher that I've worked with in the past, and every Tuesday I am in class with him, boot camp. It's all day, and we're classical training. I mean, like super academic Russian academy style figure drawing and painting. So that's, it's like, I want that. I want that so much in my life, but even sitting down to like face a blank canvas and work in oils when I haven't been working in oils is like, I get nervous sitting there, and then like I do it and I'm throwing myself in, and just that hurdle alone feels better. Like, okay, I did it, got into it. I'm always pushing myself. If I'm not drawing on my own, I go find an uninstructed figure class that I can join, and or I'll go to a coffee shop, draw people there. But I think my biggest process is just always studying and always putting in work to see what comes out.
I feel like that's the part that Jay missed. He's like, oh, I hate you so much right
now. Are you more a process person?
No, he just misses doing that.
I think when you said the administrative stuff, I was like, I'm sitting here nodding my head, because I've been so like sucked into that part of it that I feel like for me, and I'm sure you can relate to this, it sounds like you can, where like when I get in these like zones of like months of like learning something with marketing or something with my websites going on or marketing, it's almost like I almost convince myself that I no longer need to be painting or doing art, because I feel like, okay, that's just a waste of time right now, or I try to convince myself that I'm not really as into it as I used to be, or it's the whole imposter syndrome thing kicks in where I'm like, I'll do that next month. Right now I just got to buckle down and deal with this business stuff. And I feel like it's been challenging for me to sort of prioritize that playtime when there's no like in quotes, like definitive measured result that's going to come out of it. I feel like especially being a dad of 3 kids, I feel like I constantly have to be generating results and income, and it's a lot of pressure. When that pressure's invoked, it's very hard to kind of just get in that creative space. So I force myself, but it is very hard.
Well, we all have to be a little bit easier on ourselves. Like, we are all only one person, and you can only do so much at a time. Even I can look back at the last few months and be like, what has taken so long?
Yeah.
Why am I not in my studio? But it's like press kits and websites and product photos. And so much stuff goes into the release of a product.
Yeah.
I do that. I do all of it myself. So I've realized that like you can do it all is for women, and that's a feminist lie. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
And I had some big goals on my 2019 list. I was like, oh, this year I got the book coming out, but I'll have some downtime right before all that craziness starts. And I'll sublet my place and I'll go stay in New Mexico and do a painting retreat and knock out like a whole new collection. And like, I have very humbly moved that idea to 2020.
Right.
And it felt good to be like, that's not realistic for now. And that's okay. It's on the to-do list in life. And doing something else right now, and I'm just going to move it forward.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit about what I expected the show to be more about your figure drawing, but it's actually illustrations from the books. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So my new book is called Bad Day, and it's about overwhelming feelings and getting through them for ages 0 to 101. And it's kind of an expansion on my collection of vegan books and the cookbook. So where I've addressed our physical health and the well-being of animals and planetary health. Now I'm getting into our emotional well-being. It also happens to be the 10th year anniversary of my first book's release in 2009.
Awesome.
So putting the book launch together with a 10-year anniversary retrospective show, I decided to go through my archives, and I'll be showing original drawings and paintings, some behind the scenes stuff that no one's ever seen, and doing the book launch at the same time here in LA.
Wow. So the book is basically going to be launched at the show. It's like, this is the day you're zeroing in on.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The book comes out September 10th, and the event is September 14th. And so that will be probably the first time most people are seeing the book.
That's awesome. So you said it's now going to be like a one-day thing. Is it like a few hours at night, or what is it going to look like?
Yeah, it's at a gallery in Hollywood from 6 to 10 p.m. on Saturday, September 14th. People can follow me on Instagram and join my newsletter to hear about it and get the invite. They should do that right away. And yeah, it's going to be like a pop-up merch shop, gallery show, and I'll have all my books there for people who have them already, who want to bring them to have me sign them or get new ones, and I'll personalize them. And I'll have some personal artwork too, some of my figurative stuff and originals and prints.
In like a secret locked room where no one...
No,
I'm just kidding.
They'll be kind of like on their own wall, but if you're coming to the show, you
get ready.
Imagine going to the museum, like when kids take school field trips, they're seeing everything. And then it's no news that the female form has been the muse of all artists for all time.
Yeah, it's funny. We had like a big naked woman in our foyer for a really long time, and we actually just recently took it down.
We should say, not
an actual naked woman. And one of Jay's paintings, and it's interesting how used to it our kids are. And then when we started having all these birthday parties, we kind of realized other kids were like, "What's going on in this house?" Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you don't have to apologize for anything, but
no, I use it as our job.
It's other parents getting uptight about some things.
Yeah,
Ruby, I'm really curious about your spiritual beliefs in life. Coming from Holocaust survivors, being very socially, politically active with topics of animal rights, I'd imagine you have a connected spiritual life.
I do. I feel like I have a very deep connection to something divine. I used to feel like I was kind of the word God was unappealing to me, and now I don't mind it so much. What anyone's concept of that is. I don't pray to any specific God or idol, but I feel like I have a connection to some kind of divine connected something that's out there.
Yeah.
But ultimately I believe in people and the divinity in people and all things. I think I wouldn't say that I have a very articulate, that part of my life doesn't come out very articulately because it's just kind of ambiguous. But
do you have like a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice, or do yoga or anything of that sort?
My mindfulness and meditation practice is simply like alone, quiet time. I'm not necessarily like doing any mantras or following any specific guide, but I can really tune in to what's going on inside of me and calm anything that's happening down by kind of isolating and just delving inside and just watching what's in there. So sometimes that happens even when I'm drawing as a meditative practice for me and a spiritual practice to like, you know, if I'm myself having overwhelming feelings, that can be an outlet to kind of just pour out onto paper, you know, in writing or in line, what's going on inside of me. And that makes me feel connected, whatever that means. You know, like I feel like it takes me from feeling like I'm floating or, you know, like swimming and to being grounded.
That's awesome. Well, so do you find yourself now since this all was started while you were being a teacher, are you working with kids still? Are you finding yourself as like in that mentor role? Is that a comfortable spot for you? Like I feel like there's so many kids that just want to be artists and they see children's books and that's like a stepping stone to be like, whoa, I could do this. Like, do you find yourself in those positions?
I feel like my reach right now is, I'm not working directly with kids. My reach right now is through, you know, newsletters and events and showing up places and book signings. I love talking to kids. That always, I like the challenge of talking to a kid like they're an adult, and seeing what they say. It's always good. But yeah, just connecting even through social media. There's so many kids out there with their own accounts, or parents running their kids' accounts, or parents whose kids are very involved in their accounts. And so I feel like I'm most effective, not necessarily being in one classroom, but doing this kind of work and shooting it out to as far and wide an audience around the world that I can.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see what this new book kind of opens up in that sense, like kind of jumping out of the vegan activism side and into more of that emotional healing side. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing though, right? Like emotional.
In some ways,
I mean, for me, it's the same topics.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, my audience, it will make complete sense to my audience. And, you know, hopefully that audience will help me get to a larger, more mainstream audience. And the themes of self-help and mental health are so on the horizon right now. Everybody's kind of tuning in. And just like veganism, you know, when I started, it wasn't necessarily a household word. It feels like mindfulness is kind of becoming a household word now.
Yeah, which I absolutely love. So speaking of your audience, so who do you find your audience to be? Like we all have our, you know, there's like an article that 1,000 True Fans where you have like your core group. So do you find that you have most of your loyal audience that keeps popping up on social media? Are they people that are more attracted to and interested in one aspect of your work over the other? Is there talk to me about the business model of your work and where most attention is being pulled towards?
All my social media for 10 years was vegan centric. And I've just recently created I wanted to put more of my personal artwork back on the front burner. And so I decided that my Instagram account was Ruby_Roth, ROTH, would kind of house everything and be an umbrella for everything. That being said, the core of that audience was, to begin with, mostly vegan women and activists, men and women. So I started a separate account for my vegan children specific stuff, which is We Don't Eat Animals. And that kind of took off on its own. But I do a little bit of both on both things. So my audience, I would say, is still primarily women. They're pretty progressive and free-spirited. So they don't seem to mind my more adult work. But that adult work can get edgier and edgier. And sometimes it's about sex or rage or like whatever is like deep in me or that I'm going through, or relationship stuff or family stuff. And I also illustrated a book called Hummingbird by Jude Angelini, who's known as Rude Jude. He's a Sirius XM radio host, and his book is accounts from his life And those are all sex and drug stories. And the illustrations I did were really, really banal, like had nothing to do with the edginess of that story, but like just something illustrated, like a parking meter or a lot, like a deadbolt, something from his stories. But then a lot of his audience joined me, and they like the more edgier, naked women stuff. They're into that, and then they see these children's books pop up. So I don't know. It's really, I'm still in the transitional phase, and I can see my numbers go up and down and up and down. And that's just something that I have to tolerate until things even out, or maybe they never will. And I have to be okay with that too.
I know. It's such a bipolar experience. I mean, Jay goes through the same thing. I feel like,
yeah.
And then you come across things like what you were saying, where it's like, then commission people can see something else in your art completely. And they have you do these things like a parking meter when you're like, well, that has nothing to do with what I do, but it goes you can kind of see the link, but then other people don't see that link at all. And, it's just an interesting world to be a part of.
Well, we also have to remember that like people might see your work somewhere or support your work, and they don't have to follow you.
Right.
Like they don't have to be a follower to know you and to to purchase something from you every once in a while.
Yeah, well, it'll be funny. It always is shocking to us because like Jay will post a painting from maybe 10 years ago that he was maybe really well known for, and suddenly there'll be like 1,000 people who are like, oh my God, I love the new painting. And we're like, wait, what?
Right.
Like, what's happening?
I assume everybody has seen all the stuff that I do, and you can't assume that.
No, yeah, not at all. Especially when you have the depth of work that, you have and Jay has.
But that is also a reminder that you have more content to share than you even think that you do.
Yeah.
That's true. It's
we are all like, oh my God, what I got to share.
I don't have anything left. Yeah.
And you can recycle things and bring things out of the woodwork. And that goes for everybody listening too, who's working on that stuff. It's like, you've got plenty, go dig through the crates, pull some stuff out.
Yeah. So Ruby, for artists listening that are trying to figure it out, which is every artist. So can you talk about what business model wise, what is working for you now? Like what percentage or what part of your revenue, your income is coming from books versus selling prints versus originals, or maybe some things that you've tried that totally didn't work for you? I'm really curious, like some of those lessons that you've learned and are still learning.
The books continue to work. And I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but books are small money in general. They are a portion of my income, but I do a lot of things, including having graphic design clients, and branding and editorial illustration. I illustrate for Veg News magazine every issue. And I have different clients that I work with in different capacities for their businesses. So that's a big branch. And also, I mention this because I'm still in transition in a big life way. I pulled the rug out from under my life 3 years ago, where I was in a family, and I was working on my husband's business and doing my books on the side, and that was a fun little side gig. And so I've had to start from scratch pretty much in the last 3 years. So I'm still figuring out what's working. The books have always worked. They're doing their thing. They're supported by a publisher and a distributor. They're available worldwide. People can find them. Those are kind of a well-oiled machine. And I have a website where I also sell those books. But my competition is Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So sometimes people might find me and come to check out what I'm doing. You can only get signed and personalized books from me that I doodle in for your kids. And people do like that. So, the shop on my website is a source of income, whether it's the children's books or my prints, my adult prints, or whatever I'm doing. I can throw it on there. But my business model, it's several different branches. It's commercial for like branding. It is fine art, my personal artwork, and it's children's books. And what I'm known for at the moment, if people search me, the children's books come out. So it's going to take a while. I haven't begun to reach out to galleries for my adult stuff. I've barely begun to work on putting my adult stuff into the outside
fun
world.
world that is, let me tell you.
I hate working with galleries.
Can't wait to get into that nightmare.
I've had such like horrific. Well, I'm not going to like paint this with a broad brush, so to say, but I've had so many gallery experiences where I just like walked away with an icky taste in my mouth. I'm sure there's like amazing gallery owners, and I know some amazing gallery owners, but some of the experiences that I've had, it just seems like I don't know, it's very difficult for the gallery owner and it's very difficult for the artist, and unless you're in like the perfect zone where you're really, really, really famous, or you're painting very quickly to make enough money on it, it seems like a really tough way to make a living as an artist, from my experience.
It is, and my background, and training is kind of like circumvent that world, go around it, and do your own thing.
Yeah.
But also I appreciate brick and mortar things, and social media goes up and down, and you can reach your people and then you can't reach your people. So I almost feel like, not thinking of it, if you're getting into the gallery world, not necessarily thinking of it as like your next big source of income, but almost like added advertising.
Yeah, as long as you're thinking about it that way, absolutely. Like we can look at our sales and track exactly where we've done shows. Like if we do a year and we've had like shows in California, Colorado, like Jay used to do Brazil every year, we literally will see those sales carry for like 5-6 years after in those spots. Like it's just like, okay, like that's where everything sort of like bursts open, is wherever we're paying attention to. So it definitely makes sense, but it's not going to be like, oh, I had a show tonight and I made $1 million, like that's the thing with galleries.
I think we all have to think about it as, it's constant experimentation and constant
for sure.
investment into your career. And if somehow you can keep it all afloat, that's all it is you just keep going. Yeah.
Are there so when you're flipping around Instagram and you're looking at other art movements or other artists, what kind of jumps out at you that makes you double take? Like, like you look at something and you're like, seriously, that's popular, or that's whatever. Like, I feel like we all look at stuff and we take turns comparing, and we'll say that person is like way too amazing, I suck. And there'll be people I see, I'm like, really? They have like 4 million followers? Seriously? Like, are there things that kind of jump out at you on those things where you're just kind of confused or inspired?
Sure. I mean, but that's always been the case. I can go into a museum and be like, right. What the hell?
The art world is so confusing. It's so bizarre. People ask me all the time, can you explain art to me? I'm like, nope, not really.
Yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason. It's like there's artists out there that I love and respect so much.
Yeah. And
nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like it will make me cry to like see their work. It's like in the levels that they've reached with their craft is just so moving.
Are there any names you want to drop to give them some well-deserved credit?
I mean, people who like don't have much art history, but for example, like Fetchin. I went to the Fetchin house in New Mexico. Fetchin was he's way long dead, but he was a craftsman and a painter, like one of the maybe best painters that ever lived. Mm. And I walked into that house and I just like started to cry. I was like, and his whole house is carved. Like he carved
oh my God,
all the furniture and the wood and like just incredible. But people like that, that are, I look at that and, then I'll pop on Instagram and someone's drawing stick figures with like fluorescent pink, flat digital color, and they're just making funny stories, and like they have 500,000 followers.
That stuff gets me so pissed off, and I know it's super not like, I know it's not like smart to go down that rabbit hole or like to talk shit about people, but when I see stuff like that, I'm like, really? It just gets me so frustrated, because I'm definitely not the best artist that's ever lived, like by far. I'm not saying I am, I never would, but I feel like I put so much emphasis on trying to improve my craft, and when I see like there's some incredible mind-blowing street art out there, like amazing stuff, but then I'll stumble across someone that's like using a character that's already been designed by someone else, and they just change it into a different pose, or they put like a different word on something that already exists, and they just like steal someone else's shit. And I'm like, really? You're like, you have 2 million followers for doing that? Like,
yeah, you know what? I take comfort when I feel that way, and like that I feel like I've come up with something original that's unique to me and it's authentic to me, whether it's the kids' books or the adult work, my style. And you will not find me copying anybody.
Yeah.
You will not be able to say like, oh, that's just a straight bite from X, Y, and Z, which I see all the time, including some of like the biggest artists out there, are taking from old styles, old 1920s posters, like there's just so much biting.
Yeah.
But,
really famous people doing it. Like,
yeah. And getting away with it because they just can. I also just think it all comes down to art education, right? So like if you understand what it takes to get to a certain level, then you have more appreciation and therefore you are seeking out more depth in art that you look for.
Yeah, and kids don't have
there's just
the
not
education
a whole lot of education behind
so,
it anymore. Yeah.
So they see something that's like really recycled and they're just like, oh, it's so amazing. And like, really? It's actually been around for like, 50 years. Like,
yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. It's like,
and also, I mean, people aren't, you and I are looking at things through an art lens, and other people are looking through certain things as like a comedy lens, like that makes them laugh, and so they're going to follow.
Yeah, or like a pop culture thing.
Different values.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, people, that's a good point. And I feel like I could probably kind of call myself out on it because I could hear like a song that is completely not the greatest song on the planet, and yet it's catchy, and I find myself like, oh, I like that song, even though it's obviously not the most original or talented, most amazing song ever. So I guess people do that with art, but I feel like art is unique in the fact that anything that can fit in a frame or be on a pedestal can be considered art. And I feel like sometimes memorabilia from a famous person gets confused with art. And I guess as an artist, as someone that considers myself dedicated to my craft, I do take offense at it, even though I know that's not the healthy outlook at all to do that.
So are we not buying like a George Bush original? It's not.
Probably not so much.
I have always thought that there should be another word besides artist that gets used, like the word cleverest.
Right, like Banksy, right? Like
like people who are clever. And
like Banksy is like clever as shit, but he, like fine artist, I'm not so sure. Like,
agreed.
But
it's all combined into one. It's really interesting.
Oh my gosh, these are some great topics. I feel like I could talk about forever.
Know. Well, so
also just what comes to mind with all of this is like we are all trying. Nobody knows. Even top level people are still experimenting and are not sure what's going to work and what isn't.
Yeah.
And I often tell myself like you haven't even begun to try. When I'm feeling doubt or whatever, there's so many things to try and so many avenues to explore,
right?
That we really cannot let ourselves go down any hole of like, oh, it's not working. You haven't even tried.
No, it's true. And that's like, isn't that where all the angst like comes from too? Because it's just like, I'm capable of so much more. So then you get frustrated, and that's when it is like coming outward at other people. You're like, I know I can do more. Like that's where it comes from.
I feel
usually a good friend will tell you like, are you kidding? You're doing awesome and you're doing great. You need to calm down.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah.
I feel like for me, like, so I'm working on a painting now. I've been working on it for about a month or so, like 2 hours here, an hour there. And I feel like I'm at the point right now in the piece where I'm just like, fucking A, I should have been done with this like weeks ago. I suck. But then I feel like I know that if I just push through like 7 layers of discomfort, eventually something really worthwhile will happen. And I feel like a lot of artists, whatever their medium, don't push themselves beyond what they think they're capable of enough to see what they're capable of. Like they get to the point where they're just frustrated or tired of looking at it or listening to the song, and they just stop because they're like, well, I can't do any better. And if they would just push themselves like that extra 20 miles, they would really see what their potential might be.
Absolutely. I think that's, circling back, that's just the resistance. It's not who's the best artist, it's who can overcome the most resistance and just keep going.
It's so true. Well, so this has been amazing. I have one last question for you, Ruby, that we ask everyone, and then we will let you go on your way. So if we had to place you back in your childhood kitchen, what is the first thing you think of?
My childhood kitchen. probably the fact that I cut out all sugar when I was little.
Did you? Oh, because of your health?
Yeah, I noticed that sugar made me feel bad. And so like I did not eat sweets when I was a little kid for a very long phase.
That's awesome. I feel like my daughter is actually like, she's in open conversation about how icky it makes her feel these days.
Interesting. Yeah, good. He's tuned in.
Yeah.
Our kids don't really eat sugar. When they do, they become such a-holes. Like, it's just like not even funny.
And my daughter notices about her brothers even more so. Like, she'll be like, they had sugar. Like,
That's
I can
funny.
see that they are terrible.
That's probably not the most fun answer, but
No, I love it.
The fun answer is baking in the kitchen with my grandma.
Okay. No, I love it. This question, we've gone everywhere from like 6 foot like phone wires, like that's what people remember, to like
Some
Kraft
randoms.
macaroni and cheese, to
Our
it's
last,
awesome.
we just had speech from Arrested Development on, and he said his memory was that he used to eat starch. With
He said his mom had like a starch addiction, so they would eat this like weird floured starch thing.
It's like a funny topic. Ruby, this is random as hell, but did your grandmother make stuffed cabbage? Was that her thing?
One of the grandmas did, yes, for sure. There's definitely heavy Hungarian cooking with cabbage.
My grandparents were Polish, and that's like one of the only things that my grandmother would make that my parents would actually say they liked.
Well, I make it now, and Jay's dad every single year is like, this tastes like real food. Like, he's so shocked. It's vegan food is real food.
I cook it for my friends, and it's like one of their favorite things that they make. So.
It's a very easy vegan one for sure. It's like such an easy like translation on that one.
Yeah. So good.
Oh man, Ruby, this has been awesome. I'm so stoked to have had this opportunity to chat with you. Like I said, we've been checking out your artwork since our daughter was in the womb. So
yes, I actually have a few things in my cart on your shop right now. So we're gonna have to scoop up a few things.
I'm super excited to have connected with you guys, and happy to connect with artists all over the world. And what a great community and a blessing it is in my life to go down this road and get to meet people like you and your audience.
Yes. Well, good luck with everything at your show. I can't wait to see pictures.
You want to drop the websites or show information again for everyone to have it?
Yeah. Find me at rubyroth.co, not com, co.
Co.
And at ruby_roth, ROTH. And you can find everything else from there. Join my mailing list. I'll be sending out invitations to this event, to the book launch and gallery show. And if you can't make it there, just follow me, and I'll be sending out other event invites in the coming months.
Awesome.
Can I put you on the spot? And if we come to LA, could we consider some kind of a artist/vegan collab of some sort?
For sure.
Go grab some food at what's it? Where do we go? Native Foods.
Oh my God, there's 5 million vegan places just in my restaurant, in my neighborhood alone.
Yeah,
so.
awesome.
All right, cool. We'll do that. So thanks, Ruby. It's been great.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Thanks, guys. We hope you loved that episode. If you did love it and could give us some love on iTunes, that would be amazing. You can leave a review, and we will give you a shout out at some point on this podcast.
Also, if you guys can follow us on social media, we would love to hear from you. We are on pretty much every social media platform at Shifting Perceptions Podcast, which is the same as our website, shiftingperceptionspodcast.com. We look and reply to all comments, so please share with your friends, tag us. We appreciate all the love.
And don't forget that all of our guests also see all these comments, so I'm sure if you want to just have a space you can reach out, these are the places to do it. We also want to give some love to our amazing photographer that has done all of our photos so far,
Kevin Rigby.
His website is wavelightstudio.com.
And also our really good friend John Harvey, who did the music for our podcast. You can find him at Instagram at Harvey Wallbanger. So that's our little rolling credits. We will be back next week.